Anyway. Okay, so welcome both members of the public and members of the committee to the 62nd meeting of the Committee for Finance in the 22-27 mandate. As always, this is broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. If you're using a phone, either put it on silent or airplane mode. Agenda item 1 is apologies. We have no apologies, and indeed we may have everyone in person, which will be a novel, welcome novelty. Agenda item 2 is declaration of interests. Does anyone have an interest to declare at this stage? No. Okay. Agenda item 3 is chairperson's business. 3.1 is written ministerial statement from the Minister of Economy on the Invest NI review of investments. That's at page 6 of the meeting pack, members. The Economy Minister laid a written statement on Invest NI on Thursday, 16th of October, indicating that she asked Invest NI to review its investments to make sure that it does not support projects that manufacture arms or their components for supply to Israel. The review has concluded that Invest NI does not support the manufacture of arms or their components for Israel, and the Minister has welcomed this finding. A copy of the review is enclosed in the pack. The Minister subsequently instructed officials to prepare additional measures, including the development of a new ethical investment framework. Obviously, this is members have commented on this in different fora. Does anyone wish to comment on this meeting? Okay.
Yes, please. Obviously, also a declaration of interest I've already written to the Minister for the Economy, pointing out to the fact that she has no varies when it goes to foreign affairs, defence affairs, or indeed international trade. And I've also communicated that fact with our government. So I just want to make that point on record. I don't think it's instructing anybody, and particularly Invest NI, on something that's not within their varies, I don't think is appropriate. But others will have differing opinions, no doubt.
Okay. Did you wish to come in, Frank?
Yeah, I will comment that it's disappointing that the Minister, I feel it falls into a pattern of not appreciating the role of defence.
You just point out we're not the
economy.
Great, so make a head point.
But still, it's been brought to us. It's in our pack, so I will comment on that. That as a significant growth sector for the Northern Ireland economy, and therefore for our finance through rates income, and I feel there's a lack of appreciation from some parties of that significant growth sector at a time when many countries are increasing their defence spend.
Okay. Deirdre, you wish to go ahead?
Yeah, well, just to welcome the statement, and obviously in the context of what's been happening when Israel is being investigated for war crimes, I think this is an appropriate and measured response from the Minister.
Okay, I would just add, since others, first of all, it's just for the purpose of me being chair of the Finance Committee, it's important obviously that this was raised with us, and there is an onward action for the Finance Minister involving him instructing officials to prepare additional measures around procurement, which is part of the reason why we're discussing it. I would say a couple of things. I personally, but not speaking as chair of the Finance Committee, think it was important that this investigation took place. I note at 1.4 in the report, it actually says that the review confirmed that no project supported by Invest NI was for the purpose of supporting the manufacture of arms or their components for supply to Israel, which isn't quite the same thing as saying there was no Invest NI supported company has ever manufactured anything for the purposes of use by Israel. They're two slightly different things. There's a factual point others may wish to pursue in other fora. Having said all that, I think people have put their comments on the record. I personally strongly believe that, given and I am speaking personally, not as chair of the committee, that in the seriousness of what's happening in the genocide, I think it was entirely understandable that people want to see action taken locally. But I think everyone's put their position on the record in relation to this. So I'm going to move on unless people wish to add to it. Okay. So the next agenda item, members, is the Interparliamentary Forum, which is on the 28th of November 2025. I've been invited to attend the Interparliamentary Forum. My intention would be to go with the clerk there and back on the same day on Friday 20th of November to Senate, which is at Senate Cymru in Cardiff Bay. If members are content that I attend on the committee's behalf. Okay.
Be going the night before, Chair. There's no chance of getting there at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's
Cardiff doesn't have a great deal of flights. We may have to get very creative about that. Very creative. There may be a car hire.
the boat to Holyhead.
Yeah.
Like,
This is Bristol.
like so many before. Anyway, right now, the 3.3 is the Public Sector Transformation Board. Members of page 47 of the meeting pack. There is information supplied to the committee on the Public Sector Transformation Board, including extracts from committee session, Hansard, finance question time, and the Dallo readout response. Collectively, these suggest or indicate that while the department is supporting the board, it no longer has senior officials who are directly involved. However, the Minister receives options from the Minister receives options from the board, and he decides which proposals are recommended to the executive for funding. So this is to note. I mean, I would simply say, members, this is, I think, what is sometimes called a Heath Robinson or a Rube Goldberg device in terms of complexity. I really don't understand why we've built in all these strange layers of the TO are now responsible for it, but with finance officials advising them, and then a proposal or a recommendation after bids goes back to the Minister of Finance, who triages it before it goes back to the executive. It all seems slightly overly complex to me, and I'm not entirely clear why all those additional layers are necessary. But I'll bring in others to go there. Deputy Chair, Dan, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'd put in an oral question to the Finance Minister that was rejected as not under remit with regard to the Public Sector Transformation Board as well. But I do feel like there still is a role, and I wonder, should we consider having maybe a joint committee meeting with TEO on this at some point, as the next set of options are progressing quite soon, rather than us having a session and ask questions and being told that's being dealt with TEO and vice versa.
Do you mean like an informal meeting or a concurrent?
Concurrent.
I'm personally up for that. I think subject to, obviously we have a tight work schedule, so it may be that we would have to do that in addition as an additional session, given I'm very keen that we progress our...
They are in our time slot, which is really handy.
Yeah. So
yeah, we can talk about it. We can talk to them about it.
Yeah. So that's mainly, this is why the media tend to look at all the fireworks and fallings out there, while we get on with actual substantive business here. In principle, I'm comfortable with that, and I think it's important, and given it connects in with some of the broader. Can I just suggest, if members are content with that, we at least explore the option with the TO committee that we might want to see if it's linked to some slightly broader questions about reforms, not civil service reform, but public service reform. People are content with that. We'll at least explore that, and the team can bring back some options, assuming the TO committee is interested. Okay, the next agenda item is reserve claim the PSNI data breach. So members, there we have there's a letter that the committee got from the Minister regarding the UK Government's rejection of a reserve claim, which we'll just deal with the matter arising as well while we're here. The letter's there, it's a short letter. Basically the Treasury has rejected the reserve claim. So we'll just cover the matters arising while we're here. Obviously there was an urgent question which I submitted that we discussed in the Chamber yesterday. I'm going to suggest two actions. Well, I'll suggest two actions and I'll make a comment. Two actions. One, I think we should tell the department that we want to be kept abreast urgently of their follow-on action. So the Minister has told us in his letter that the Treasury has declined the request, but then he indicated in the Chamber yesterday that he was going to go back and ask again. While I'm sure we would all rather that the Treasury had said yes in order to ease, and certainly that would, I have no difficulty saying that. I'm sure there's we all in these situations would rather that the request had been granted. I think it's important to say if we need to know what the plan is if this isn't granted, because this question was asked once, the answer was no. It was asked again, the answer was no. If we're just asking the third time in order to effectively create more process, and I would worry give the impression to police officers who want to know how this is going to be paid for, and indeed support ancillary PSNI support staff, I'm not sure that's terribly responsible if there's very little chance that the request is going to be altered. You can ask again as many times as you like, unless there's a specific reason, i.e. some new negotiation or some new detail that in way that this is going to be asked in the context of multi-year budget discussions, for example. My concern would be this is just a bit of kind of process, and it's frankly slightly disingenuous from the perspective of PSNI officers if it's not going to lead to a different answer, even if you want the answer to be different. There's, I think, an action to be responsible. So the actions I was going to suggest are I will bring in members here. I think we should find out from the department exactly what their realistic assessment is of, and what their strategy is for getting a different answer. Basically, are they just asking the question again? And to be kept abreast of this quite urgently and regularly, ideally by the time we return, which is a fortnight from today. But I'll bring in others. Jerry Carroll first, and then Owen Tennyson.
Thanks, Chair. No issue with that. I know there's a separate data breach issue in the news, and it's being described as the biggest ever, and the cost is £100 million. It's a company involved in England. So I don't know if this is available already, but can we ask for a breakdown of why is the figure £119 million? So I have no issue with your suggestion, Chair, but I don't have that information of why that is the figure. So maybe ask for a breakdown of how that figure was arrived at.
We can definitely ask that. I think the answer is that's the Department of Justice's current estimate, I think, is the right answer, but I'm not sure, but we can ask that.
Direct authorities, I don't know if that's publicly available, but can we request that?
We can definitely ask for that information. Yeah, that's no problem at all. The department can tell us where that number comes from, because they obviously will have had to, in order to justify the reserve claim, they will have had to give that information to the Treasury, so we can ask them for that information. Owen, you were looking at?
Yeah, I was just saying, first of all, I think it's an appalling decision from the Treasury in the first instance. If this doesn't meet the criteria for a reserve claim, then it begs the question, what does? Particularly in the context of Northern Ireland, where we don't have the same ability to carry our own reserve as Scotland. So I think that is something that we also need to examine in terms of, if we can't rely on Treasury reserve, are we going to look at setting up our own so that we can plan for unforeseen expenditure? Second area is related somewhat to what Jerry had said, and that is, I would be keen to tease out with the Department of Finance what the potential consequences are if cases are not settled in this financial year. So if we start to see them being litigated through the courts, is there a possibility that estimated cost balloons? And then, if that is the case, what is the department's strategy? As you say, Chair, if by going back with a further request for the Treasury, as they absolutely should, they delay settling these cases, what will the financial implications be, and are we going to see any allocations over the course of the next year to allow PSNI to start to make those settlements? So just agree that we should be kept abreast of it, and I think we should explore that issue around Northern Ireland's ability to carry a reserve, should we be unable to rely on the Treasuries.
Just a quick, sorry, Chair. Bearing in mind the Chief Secretary of Treasury wrote to the Minister for Finance back in the beginning of the month, basically saying, we're not going to reserve claims are going to be only in exceptional circumstances, laid out very clearly the thing. I'm just wondering why this has suddenly come as a surprise at the end of the month that this was happening, because I think I'm not saying the Chief Secretary of Treasury is right, and I would argue quite strongly that they're wrong. But it was very clearly indicated that there wasn't going to be any reserve claims, and bearing in mind what was happening with the budget coming up as well, it doesn't seem likely. I've just, again, if we're trying to communicate with the department, what indication did they give to the other departments that it was extremely unlikely that a reserve claim was going to be met? Well,
I'm not sure they give any indication. I think they've been relatively consistent that it wouldn't be. Whether that's
it just seems strange that a month on we're surprised about the fact we weren't getting money, even though we're told we weren't going to get the money a month ago.
Well, we were told we weren't going to get the money a year ago.
Yeah.
I think
I'm trying to be generous, Chair.
even if you think the Treasury position is totally incorrect and wrong, we know and are illustrated repeatedly that the way the fiscal setup works in the UK, whether you like it or not, in the devolved context, is basically what they say goes, and you have to kind of either push very hard or try and negotiate, and it was just not clear that there was what the leverage was or what the new information was, even if we think the Treasury, as with, for example, city deals, were being unreasonable and pig-headed. But we can ask for all that information. Okay, members, I do think it's really important that we keep on top of this, because we also need to know, is it going to crystallise? If this is in year, does this, is this another new pressure in addition to the 600 or 700 million pressure that we talked about a couple of weeks ago? Okay. and I think we can come on, but yeah, okay. But further that which relates to our next note, which is members 3.5, a memo from the department commissioning, which is in front of you, a memo from the department commissioning a December monitoring round was received this morning and is being tabled in hard copy. The memo indicates that departmental returns will be made in, the memo will be in next week's pack. This memo will be in next week's pack, and departmental returns must be made by the 20th of November. Two bits of information I would like to know are, if we have it here, I don't think say in this pack, it does actually, that yes, we're having a single December round rather than an October and a January one. That's answered my question. Okay, like a pre-Christmas one.
It does make sense, Chair,
yes.
Because January's always risky because it's so late in the financial year, so I think it does suggest a sensible move.
Okay. Pre-Christmas, of course, we'll do a kind of like toy show style monitoring round. I shouldn't get in trouble for saying that, but anyway. Right.
Other shows are available, Chair.
Just through the chair.
Steve Aiken.
I mean, it's just the figure they come up with. The pressure's about 150 million or so. We've already heard that the police claim's not going to be met and the rest of it. Maybe could we go back to the department just to ask them a revised, maybe just an upward indication of what the pressures are going to be. Well, I don't want the details of it, but just
had that a couple. I think it's worth saying if it's changed since the last time we heard. So we had the official
sort of thing. I think it's changed, Chair.
So we have the obviously the agreement, and I think we need to understand what that means, and that's another point that we want to discuss today, which is what exactly the last week's agreement at the executive means in terms of pay pressures. Yep. So I think we can ask that in conjunction, just to kind of tidy this up. It would be helpful to get an updated sense from that relevant team, which is Emer and Marianne and Joanne too, I suppose.
It's just to the chair, with your indulgence, it just seems a bit late to me. Bear in mind we're coming on the 22nd of October.
Yeah, but we need to know, exactly what the updated Ardell pressure is. Okay. Right.
150 million.
So we will forward that to other statutory committees and the audit committee if members are agreed. 3.6, the Presbyterian Mutual Society. So members, the department has laid a write-off minute regarding the Presbyterian Mutual Society, which was received this morning. We've had a couple of things this morning, and is being tabled in hard copy in front of you now. It will be in next week's pack. When a government department proposes to write off the repayment of a Northern Ireland Consolidated Fund loan whose principal outstanding exceeds 20 million, it is the normal practice for the Department of Finance to present to the Assembly a minute explaining the circumstances and giving particulars of the write-off, except in cases where, excuse me, I've missed what I was writing. Except in cases of special urgency, DOF consent is withheld until 14 working days, excluding weekends, after the issue of the minute. The executive has agreed in principle to write off the loan, or the loans. The Ministerial Working Group agreed a package of funding which included a secured £175 million interest-bearing bridging loan plus an additional unsecured £50 million interest-free loan. So this is way back in 2011. Following consideration and approval by the executive, the then DETI department was designated as the relevant department to take the solution forward. The executive agreed to place the unsecured £50 million interest-free loan at the bottom of the hierarchy of repayment, and as such it was unlikely it would ever be repaid. This was reflected in the annual report and accounts ending 31st of March 2012 by carrying the full £50 million interest at nil value. The Mutual Society was placed into liquidation to formally realise all remaining assets to ensure as much as possible was recovered in October 2023. The liquidation is now concluded and resulted in the following shortfalls on the two loans issued to the Presbyterian Mutual Society. £175 million loan, there's a shortfall, so of the two loans, of the £175 million loan there is a shortfall of just over £12 million, and of the £50 million loan there's a full shortfall, none of it was repaid. So that is concluding. I think I'll just say a couple of things, members. We may want to discuss the detail of this write-off, I think it's worth saying that it was probably always anticipated that these loans would be written off in some form. We're dealing with the consequences. This is us still dealing with the consequences of the financial crash that happened 15 or more years ago. But if members want to give a view, either endorsing or opposing the writing off of these loans, now is the time to indicate that you wish to have a discussion on that. My view, first of all, as chair, is that while I don't want to, I certainly would not minded to oppose, I don't think it's necessarily for the committee to give a, we're not the accountants, we're not the auditors, I don't think we need to sign this off. I do think there might be some further information that we want for the record, simply to ask for. I think in general this is a subject of interest and essentially an unwinding of a very big thing that happened 15 years ago, but I'll bring in others to give their views if they have any. And we are, by the way, I'm conscious that people are getting this in real time.
Yeah,
so you haven't had time to consider the detail. So we will have an opportunity to discuss it next week, but we've only got 14 days from now.
I know, and I appreciate that. But that's £62 million that would have been agreed not by our committee, but it had been agreed by the Executive Committee. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
And previously by the Department for Economy agreed it?
Well, I think if I'm understanding it, and I'm kind of getting it in real time too, Clark, correct me if this is wrong, whenever these loans were first agreed by the Presbyterian to give to the Presbyterian Society way back in 2010-11, the way they were accounted for almost indicated that it was unlikely that they would be repaid in full.
Yeah.
And that has been reflected in the accounting of them ever since. This process is now the formal writing off of these liabilities, not liabilities of these loans.
And again, just because I'm looking at it in fresh, clear time.
The executive has agreed it. Yeah.
Yeah, the £175 million loan, the shortfall was 12 million. So that's slightly less than 10%. So okay, that's it. But the £50 million loan, the shortfall is 50 million. I appreciate it's probably not, but I would just like to get some detail to get my head around this. And bearing in mind, it wasn't agreed by our committee either.
Well, and nor would it be, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying we wouldn't be agreeing it because we're not the people making the loan, as it were, or we're not the parties to the transaction. I mean, we can ask, as I suggested, for a little bit more
briefing note, please.
Information. Well, yeah, maybe a briefing note. And then I don't necessarily want to detain us for a huge amount of time on this, but I think for the purposes of due diligence, getting a little bit more of a briefing note from them is that we can have for the pack when we return. Although I think, by the way, by the time we come back, the time will have elapsed. So we will be doing it almost for academic interest. Yeah. But can I just? I suggest then if members have any urgent difficulties that they wish to raise about the writing off of this, that they will correspond during.
Just so we can reflect it back to the department. There's no sense that the committee is voting on this. It's really a case of the department.
We're not asking people to endorse the idea of this. By the way,
the department has sent this because it's been laid with the 14 working day period. So it's really as a courtesy. So the department will be holding off on making a final decision for 14 days, and they are interested if we have any comments from the committee.
Can I just check one thing that I think is worth? I vaguely remember, and I'm not sure this is wrong. This was going back to maybe the Brown government. I vaguely remember the UK government gave financial assistance to help with this. So I just think that would be helpful for us to know. So is the writing off of this £50 million loan a loan which effectively came from London initially? I think that a bit more context and a bit more chronology for the record would be helpful. Yeah. From the department. And
I take the fact that it's gone through the other committees, but Joanne's writing to us about this, so it is becoming into our remit. Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't know enough about it to say any more.
Well, sorry. Yes, that's all true. So we will get more information if there's any way it could be provided to members just in soft copy while we're on recess, so people, if they have any views. Also, we're saying, obviously, just for the purpose of all this, lots of the people who were aided with this were just ordinary, completely kind of trusting members of the Presbyterian Society who were left in difficulties because this thing was, mismanaged or whatever, and then it was a victim of the financial crisis. But I think Brian Kingston would have come in. Jerry Carroll first, and then Brian Kingston.
And like Steve, more of the issue obviously in the media over the years, and that's why it's a bit perplexing that we're given 14 days notice to not approve but to consider this, and it's been swirling around for years, to put it mildly. So I have a lot of issues with that, and in my recollection, I haven't on this committee considered a loan write-off. Maybe it's the first time for myself, maybe other members did it in previous committees. So, and I don't know enough about the sort of the weeds of this. Chair. So can we have, like, is there a way of having some kind of email procedure, like over the recess, that if
just establish that recess doesn't count, so you don't need to worry about recess, because the recess doesn't count in the 14 days. So we have a bit longer than we thought.
Okay. Well, I would just like time to consider this.
Yeah. Fine. Brian Kingston.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as I recall, this was a classic sad example of a boom followed by a bust, and a run on the funds of the society that it couldn't realise with the crash in the market at the time. I think, as I recall, there was a critical issue that it wasn't registered with the appropriate, I think it's the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, as the banks would be. And therefore there wasn't compensation available for its members. So I don't know who we write to know, has that lesson been learned, and would that not now be the situation if that scenario arose again for any investment?
You mean a member of a mutual? Yeah, maybe the department should be able to tell us that, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, some of this will have been UK level legislation,
but especially anything that's registered in Northern Ireland, any similar society now, investment society, would be registered with that compensation scheme to prevent this happening again.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think it's important to say this has been budgeted for. This loss has previously been budgeted for, so it doesn't look like it has any budgetary impact.
The categorisation of the second loan of 50 million as not being a priority one, where they've effectively written it off, Chair, from the beginning. So
I think what you're asking is that, is this genuinely just a technical, final accounting writing off of this? But we'll get that information and we can discuss it.
Time of the year to be doing it.
Sorry?
What's the strange time of the year to be doing it if it was a writing it off?
I don't know. We'll get more information anyway, and we'll find out why now. Okay, members, we'll move on. Right. The next agenda item is draft minutes of. Draft minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of October 2025. That's page 50 from the 15th of October meeting. Members, if you're content they represent true and accurate reflection, I will sign them. Members content?
Yeah, happy.
Grand, thank you. So,
page 16.
Yeah, great. So we're now going to hear from the examiner of statutory rules. Members, who is going to give us a briefing on. So this is agenda item 6. Yes, 17. Sorry. So it's agenda item 6, and it is an oral briefing from Angela Kelly, who is the examiner of statutory rules, and then we're going to go to 8. Yeah, fine. We know when we're open. Okay.
Chair.
We're in open session.
Go ahead.
Right, okay. So, members, we've had a useful session on delegated powers in the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. We have agreed on two things. Number one, we're going to share a synopsis of our advice with other statutory committees and indeed I think the Audit Committee. We'll also get some further legal advice on scope of the bill. Are we agreed? Agreed. Okay, we're going to move to item 8, which is rate collection strategy. We've got an oral briefing from the department. Page 97 of the tabled pack is a clerk's memo on rate collection strategy. Also included for information is the rate collection strategy 25 to 28, which is page 104 of the tabled pack. The strategic review of rating terms of reference at page 122. LPS guides to rates in May 23 is at page 138. A Hansard transcript of the oral briefing session on December 24 is at page 194. We now get an oral briefing from Chris Rooney, who is Director of Revenue and Benefits, and Sharon Gallagher, who's Deputy Director, Deputy Secretary, apologies, of Land and Property Services. who provide an update on the rate collection strategy for 25-28. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, Deputy Chair and committee members for the opportunity to brief you today on our recently developed rate collection strategy. The committee has been provided with a copy of the document, which I hope you found helpful. The strategy is by design brief but clear. It sets out our deliberate and transparent intent to focus on collecting as much rates revenue as possible with the resources we have available, as well as clear statements on how we will do that. The fact that it is a rates collection strategy rather than a debt collection strategy is important in itself. It recognises the equal importance of securing early payment on new rates liabilities, as well as the need to take action to recover legacy debt. Chris has led on development of this work, and with 15 years' experience in rates collection, he has a solid understanding not only of the issues and constraints, of which there are many, but also the opportunities and possibilities for building on a sound performance last year, where over 1.6 billion was raised, the highest on record. Our approach is three-pronged. It considers what we need to do to make it easier for those who can pay, support those who can't, and take effective action against those who won't. These reflect the learning and insights gleaned over many years from engagement with ratepayers, including homeowners, landlords and tenants, businesses, elected representatives, and a wide range of third-party stakeholders. Interpretation of that feedback we have received consistently indicates the need for simpler systems that provide greater transparency, more support for those in financial difficulty, and stronger legal action where payment is deliberately avoided. Yearly action plans will support the strategy, and the plan for the remainder of this year is attached. This year's actions represent an important first step in this journey. The approach underpins our programme of transformation within LPS, where we are striving to improve our service proposition and realise further rates revenue. The LPS team and I welcome the committee's agreement to visit Lanyon Plaza and look forward to that visit, where we can outline in more detail our approach to modernisation. The potential for more collective collections through different ways of working, new collaborations, and harnessing innovative digital technologies to accelerate and strengthen our rate collection strategy represents opportunities to develop and further enhance our approach. In terms of work to date, some notable actions include the preparation for a new customer portal, which will launch in late autumn. This will allow ratepayers the opportunity to view bills and payments online, opt for e-billing and amend payment arrangements. Additionally, we are in discussions with a third-party provider to understand how we might use technology already developed and successfully deployed elsewhere to profile cases based on likelihood to secure payment. Such an initiative would have the double benefit of increasing revenue and improving the use of scarce resource. My team and I are clear we want to listen and learn from others, and we know what we want to do, but how we do it always remains under review. We welcome the committee's ongoing perspectives and support in our endeavours. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and thanks, Chris. This is timely because obviously we're both engaged in the short and what appear very long-term examination of changes to rates, but also there was a debate in the Assembly yesterday about collection. So I suppose to start off, do you have a specific target for increasing collection, and by what date?
So the target that we have, 93%, is our specific target. Clearly that target is well considered, and the Minister set out his approach to that yesterday. The target is if we achieve more than that, that is our ambition. Our ambition is to double down on every effort that we can, which is set out in our strategy, to collect not just current rates but rates, arrears of rates. So our 93% remains our target for this year, but we will do everything we can not just to meet it but to surpass it, Chair.
In terms of, the target's 93%, how would that compare to comparable entities or indeed their targets elsewhere? Obviously rates is distinct. We have a different rate run model of rates to GB and a different model again from the Republic, but what would be, and obviously it's council taxes collected by councils, but it's broadly comparable.
Yeah,
what are their respective collection rates or their targets? Are they at 93%?
No, I mean, you're right in saying the model is very different. The methodology is very different. Clearly, we've looked at other methodologies, but our target is actually encompasses not just current rates, but arrears of rates, so the full amount of rates outstanding for both domestic and non-domestic properties, and it's set at 93%, which is slightly lower than some other jurisdictions, including England, but that's because we have a broader target and encompasses all of the debt.
Which, just to unpick that, so you're saying the 93% relates to the stock as well as the flow, meaning how much is collected, remind me, per year in rates in total?
Last year 1.63 billion.
1.6 billion. So that's domestic and non-domestic, regional and district. So it's 1.6 billion, of which about 110 wasn't collected. Is that right, or is that about 110, 115?
Last year we reduced the carried forward rates by around about 47%. Okay. So that's around about 90 million with what was previously billed in other years that we then collected last year. Right.
Okay. So if I'm is there a simple way of saying the amount that was owed last year that wasn't collected in year?
So the carried forward position was 180.9 million. Yeah. But compared to 24-25, which was 180.5 million, that's a very small percentage increase. So actually from 24-25, where we carried forward arrears of 180.5, in the following year, that position only increased by 0.9, despite a 6% increase in the entirety of rates that could be collected.
So it was that's between 24-25 and 25-26?
No. 23-24 and 24-25. We're not in 25-26 yet.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So between 23-24 and 24-25, the overall stock of uncollected rates only went up very small. So that would suggest that you're in one financial year you're almost at nearly 100% of collection, or am I understanding? Because if you
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So last year,
or do you not count it as uncollected until a certain amount of time passes? Is that it?
So last year, what we did was we collected the new assessments that were raised within the year, and off that it was around about 1.7 billion. And off what wasn't collected out of that was around about 70 million, just over 70 million. So we were hitting in around about 96% collection against domestic and non-domestic. Now we can also split that out, and our performance against non-domestics for just the in-year 2024-25 rates was 95%, and our collection against our domestic rates was 96.1%. So I know it was mentioned at the committee or at the debate yesterday that there was a figure of 96% in England. I believe that is 96% of just council tax alone, and it didn't include the business rates. Yeah. Now England's business rates are ahead of us. They're sitting around about 97% collection, whereas Wales is sitting around about 96.1, and we're at 95 on our non-domestics. So we're comparable.
About 95 on non-domestic, and England's about 90.
So we're just 97.3.
97. That's on business rates, yeah.
On business rates, yeah. In terms of the uncollected amounts, you're quite right. The money that we don't collect each year accumulates each year. It's carried forward, and it's then due for collection the next year. So it's not that it's just set aside and we don't do anything more with it. Those ratepayers are billed again, and we continue with our recovery processes. So that 70 million was added to then the historic legacy balances that we have coming forward. Some of those balances extend a considerable number of years. We still have people paying rates for, I shouldn't really admit it, but it goes back maybe to 2007. People are still paying on those rates, and we're still collecting that. And that's a cumulative balance then it carries forward every year. That's why whenever we measure our performance against gross, we take all of that into consideration, and we measure our performance against that. And that's more challenging, I believe, than just measuring our in-year collection. I think our in-year collection is quite strong and comparable, certainly across other jurisdictions. But whenever you add in the historic rates, which we do, I'm not sure other jurisdictions do that. I know that England has 6.6 billion arrears.
Do they just literally, do they write it off every financial year? Do they
No,
write
I don't
an amount
believe
off
so. I
over
think
the-
they do the same. I think we all do the same thing. We all try and collect. All authorities will bill and will try and continue to collect. So it's not that we're an outlier and that we have arrears and nobody else does, and they set it aside and write it off. It's not like that at all. We all bill and continue to bill and continue to collect.
Just one final question is around, do you notice, it's one of the debates obviously, and one of the things apparently the Minister's looking at, but I don't know when we're going to, maybe you can enlighten us as to whether we had understood it was going to be discussed either last week or this week at executive, if there's an executive meeting tomorrow, I'm not sure if there is, changes to the cap, the domestic cap, and also early repayment. I so don't know if those discussions are going to happen, but one of the questions, one of the other potential things to be looked at was non-domestic vacant rating. Do you see it? Is there any interaction between properties that have a discount and rate arrears? So if you're getting a 50% discount, are you more or less likely to be in arrears? Do you know, is there
I don't think we have any evidence to suggest that. It's not something that I'm aware of, Chair.
And if I could just add as well, Chair, it's all ratepayers are treated the same. We don't necessarily differentiate between those that are getting a relief and those that are not. Whenever it comes to unpaid rates and collecting those rates, they all get billed the same way, and we still pursue the payments in the same way. So while there may be elements and repair types, as we call, that are in our caseloads, we pursue them in the same way.
right? Okay, I'm going to bring in colleagues now. Deputy Chair.
Thank you, and thanks very much for coming along. In your pardon me, in your plan there, you've got the year one implementation plan on the rates collection strategy. I was just wondering how you're getting on against that so far. There's a few of them hitting around now.
Yep. Happy for Chris to talk through the detail.
So Sharon has mentioned just that we are progressing quite well with our online services that we're offering, and we're hopeful, not that we're hopeful, it will be delivered in the autumn, where repairs will be able to access and view their own bills, set up their own or request payment plans. They will be able to choose between payment methods and be able to select e-billing. So those things are in progress, and we're very pleased to be able to say that in the autumn and in the very near future we'll be able to announce that formally. We're also looking at how we're helping our ratepayers. So we have engaged with the advice sector. We have established now a direct referral process for ratepayers who are approaching us and are content for us to pass their details on so that they get more help with debt. In our new online services, what we're doing is we're moving away from ratepayers having to actually phone us. One of the biggest challenges that we have found in the years dealing with the ratepayers is they'll bury their heads in the sand. They'll avoid actually putting their hands up and asking for help. They'll promise you the world on the phone and say, I'll pay that and I'll do that, but they never do, and the reason for that is that they struggle admitting that they need help. Within our new system, there's going to be a functionality where they can actually ask for that digitally, so they don't actually have to present it to us, and we will allow that then to transfer across to those advice sectors who can then reach out and help them. We're building all that in. In terms of our, we were in our plan, we had talked about behavioural insights and nudges. So already this year we have issued 8,000 more digital nudges, text messages and emails, and in November we're expecting to issue another 20,000 reminder letters, and they're aimed at those people who have genuinely overlooked their rate bill. Maybe they're not aware you get a rate bill in April and you set it aside, never think any more of it. So those are those prompts to try and get those payments, people into payments. In terms of our enforcement and the actions that we're taking there, we've been very robust around that. We've actually started and started to see an increase in the number of cases that we're pushing through for bankruptcy, unfortunately. And unfortunately, the way that we have experienced this is that until you push to the very last moment, you'll not get payment from some ratepayers. So this year already, by taking people right up to the door of the court, we've recovered 1.7 million from them. And that's it's highly resource intensive. It puts an awful lot of stress and strain on us in delivering the services to the wider ratepayer.
There's 89 cases brought to that stage.
Yeah. And there's more in the system that we're doing that. So I know that there is an appearance that a huge amount of money is not being collected. We are doing all of the steps and all of the things that we need to do to make it easier to pay, helping those that need help, and actually then pushing and enforcing those that won't pay. We're taking all those steps.
Thank you.
The other thing to say, Madam Chair, is Chris and his team are already starting to engage about next year's action plan. What do we put in there? Learning from what's happening in the other jurisdictions, learning from broader service to see what is it we're missing, if anything. We think we have a good understanding of good practice elsewhere, and you've seen some of that coming online soon. But we're always in listening mode to see what more we can do, because there are limited resources available to me in LPS and to Chris and his team, and it's about stretching that resource to best effect, using it to best effect to collect the money. So I think this year's plan is a good first step, but we're already starting to think about next year.
No, thank you. And I think the Minister, outlined it simply and well, and he said that those who can't pay and those who won't pay, and for those who are choosing in the won't pay category, just to have those numbers and see the fact that you're taking it seriously is quite important. I like the implementation plan. I'm the sort of person who likes to tick off boxes and just keep a wee eye on things like that. So
you and me both.
Yeah. So, but I think it's really, really good, and it's really useful, and it does help us be able to say to people who are frustrated that why is somebody getting away with not paying their rates whenever I'm paying this much. We can say, well, here are all the things that they're able to do. I just wanted to touch briefly, if I could, on the online. So it's a lot of really good measures coming forward, and you can see the benefit of them. But whenever you're talking about the LPS transformation and you're talking about the entire programme, Nova, hundreds of millions of pounds over the next 20 years, where are you at in that, and how much has been spent on this programme so far?
So I think, and I'm very appreciative that the committee's coming to visit Lanyon, because we want to show you what we're talking about with modernisation. The NOVA programme started out in 2018 and actually formally started in 2019, and it was supposed to last for 2 years and completely transform 3 parts of LPS. So it was about legacy systems that needed to be updated. The rest is history, as I say. 2020 came and all that went there. So the NOVA programme obviously didn't roll out in the way it could or should. Nonetheless, at that point, or over that period between 2019 and 2023, about £9 million has been spent. But we've just undertaken a full PPE on that process, and we can show the clear deliverables that money has achieved, including the infrastructure that will allow the integration. So if you like, this started back in 2018 because systems were going out of date. They had to replace the land registry system, the Revs and Bevs system, and the valuation system. So the NOVA was an overarching umbrella kind of initial programme terminology for that process. When I came in about a year ago and looked at it and looked at what we'd done, it was clear to me that there's 4 parts of LPS, and OSNI wasn't featured in that. But OSNI's critical to everything we do in terms of the mapping, the information, the data, the intelligence. And the other, I suppose, gap, which wasn't intentional, but it was NOVA looked through a very different, particular lens of IT. It wasn't as focused as I would have liked on our customers and our staff. So earlier this year, we launched a new corporate plan in LPS, which is all about supporting programme for government and supporting the executive, not just through the rating system, but also through the work that we do in OSNI, supporting broader programme for government. And following on from that, we have reviewed and refreshed our transformation approach, which is a much more holistic view. It's not just looking through the lens of the initial NOVA programme and that legacy IT system piece, but how we iteratively and demonstratively improve the service proposition. The big thing that we've learnt, and I was previously in health for over 10 years, is that big bang transformation doesn't work. you don't know how much money you're going to have, you don't know what things will change in your operating context. So this is about year-on-year business plans with targets that you can tick off to say, we're going to achieve this, we'll do that. And that, I think, builds confidence, not just with our staff, but with yourselves and with the broader population, that actually we're on a change journey. Transformation is a word that's bandied around a lot. Modernisation or iterative change is probably more about what we're doing, but we're very clear that we can deliver much more. And I think the portal, which will launch before the end of this year, is the first visible sign to our customers and to everybody that actually change is happening. It seems ridiculous to think we don't have a portal, but this is a huge step forward.
Thank you. And just to say, everything that you said is, I just think it's great, because I sit in Public Accounts Committee as well, and time again, it's projects, and it is people just continuing as it was, because it was what it was agreed up front, and 10 years passes and all the rest. But just to see the way you've just reflected on that, you've done your PPE, you've reflected, you've came through COVID, you've pulled it, you've changed it, you've recognised things, just keeping it fresh and identifying the need is really commendable. So I just think that's really, really good to hear, and I look forward to getting out for the visit. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Jerry Carroll.
Thanks, Sharon and Chris. I think the whole Nova programme, I think it's a scandal that Fujitsu is, I think, going to be paid at least £125 million, possibly £300 million. Given their involvement in the Horizon scandal, it's scandalous that somebody could be awarded with a huge public sector contract after what they have been accused of, first of all. But also, I don't think it's prudent, and it doesn't fill me with any confidence around all this conversation about protection of data and data leaks in other sectors. It does not fill me full of confidence, to put it mildly, but also it's I'm opposed to that practice. So you can comment on that or leave it if you want. It's okay.
I think I wasn't available to come to the committee earlier in the year when we set out the process for that. Jerry, I think you were absent on that day as well, but I can assure you there was a very clear process that put in place, due diligence, and actually we have refreshed and renewed in line with our change of approach. I now chair a strategic change board that oversees all of the contracts, and I have met with the head of Fujitsu on 3 occasions, including a couple of weeks ago, to make sure we're absolutely on track. We've got a very clear plan agreed on both sides of deliverables, and it's being closely monitored. So I fully appreciate your comments, but it's just to provide you with assurance that from our perspective this is a very, very closely managed project.
And can you give me a sense of what was discussed in those meetings? Is there, do you feel assured that data won't be leaked, or there won't be any breaches, or there won't be any glitches, or how confident and how assured are you?
I am very confident at this stage. There is nothing. We have a RAG status against contracts, against deliverables, against milestones. We have very clear transparency on both sides in terms of what's happening. I have no red risks at this stage. I have no amber at this stage. Everything is going to plan. Just by way of example, since the project started, there's been, for land registry, there's lots of very old records written in handwritten in different people's, you can't make head nor tail of them, to be honest, but in any case, a lot of work has been done with Fujitsu to restructure that. 3.7 million records, 100,000 of those cases were manually reviewed. So that's a massive amount of work. We're working through all of the milestones that we've delivered, and at this point, I am assured. But more importantly, we have the processes and the governance framework in place to have early warning signs should things start to go awry, and that's as much as we can do.
Can the committee be informed if there's any warning signals coming through? Because I would like to be informed as part of this committee, and at what particular stage can the department cancel the contract, suspend it, or is there a contingency plan if things sort of go awry?
So the programme of work and our contract with Fujitsu is covered by all of the checks and balances available to us in government, and actually has had more scrutiny, as you can imagine, than any other contract, given the recent history in Fujitsu. this is one of the reasons why I welcome your visit, so that you can understand the importance of this project, not just with Fujitsu, but transformation more generally. And we're happy to take, a good chunk of your time, if you wish, for us to walk through exactly what we're doing and show you some of what we're doing when you visit Lanyon.
No problem, and I'll maybe press some questions there. And just on Lanyon, I'm concerned as well. I got a constituent contacting me saying either it's a complete removal or certainly the again reduction of frontline staff in Lanyon Plazas. This person in particular had disabilities, and they communicated with me to say somebody with hearing difficulties and speech difficulties who can't maybe use the phone or would be difficult. There's either no provision to walk in or sort of reduced provision to walk in and pay rates, and given your targets and given the drive you'd have to collect rates, I think it would be counterproductive, never mind all questions of disability access. So that's something that's been raised to me, and I told them the person that I would raise that. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at from sort of your perspective. So maybe
a member of staff, Jerry, or
is a member of the public.
Member of the public.
You try to walk in and pay their rates, and they were told that they couldn't do that. And I think it's an online booking system, but there's no ability, or certainly scaled back ability, to walk in and pay rates at LPS at Lanyon Place, right?
Sorry, Jerry. We do still continue to provide a frontline service in all our regional offices, and Lanyon is no different to that. In Lanyon, we are predominantly land registry focused. There is a larger land registry presence there, but there are rating staff. I am disappointed that if somebody has walked in, and particularly somebody with any vulnerability, hasn't been able to get help. Now that is a concern that I will look into. Okay. But our frontline services are still open. In terms of ratepayers coming in and paying in the office, we're trying really hard to move away from that. It's an administrative overhead for us to process checks. That's an overhead that we have to take. We are moving to more digital payments, and we are looking for customers to pay online, and that's the direction we're pushing. But we are also very mindful of those customers who can't, and we will always have some service in our front offices to support those people.
And I'm sure for me, Sharon, you mentioned a third-party provider. I didn't catch the full context of what that was for, sort of towards the end of your comments. Can you recall who that was or what that was for?
That's in relation to debt stratification and how we profile ratepayers that are more likely to pay.
And do you have an organisation in mind for that?
We are in discussions with a number of people at the minute, but it's very early doors, and we're actually going back to the point that I made earlier. We're really seeing what's available at the minute. We're trying to understand what's best fit for us in LPS based on what we need and our profile of clients. So there's nothing definite by way of a contract or pre-contract discussions.
Updated on that.
Of course.
And you can keep us updated if there's any warning signals from the Fujitsu contract as well. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. We have no further members who wish. Sorry, Harvey, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I was just thinking, we're talking about those that can't pay and those that won't, and how the enforcement worked and how much you got back. But maybe you could tell me a wee bit more about those that can't pay, what your actual process is. How do you start to help those people?
I mean, it's strange. We were having these conversations over recent weeks, actually, that a member of staff can go from somebody who can pay to somebody who won't pay in a matter of a phone call, and it is very difficult because, as you quite rightly say, it's two different skill sets. One of the things that we've done is the staff in the front line have been through a training quite recently in terms of dealing with vulnerable clients. I'll let Chris talk about the detail, but certainly we use referrals to other organisations to help them address any debt concerns or whatever. But as Chris has outlined, I suppose the key is to get people to share with you that actually they're in financial straits. You know, there's obviously, for all of us, you don't sometimes want to admit that you need help and whatever, so it can be quite challenging. But I'll let Chris talk in a little bit more detail. Thanks.
Yeah, no, Sharon, thank you. And Harry, that's exactly the situation. What we really need are those ratepayers to come forward and say, I'm struggling, and at that stage then we can help. whenever we're reviewing our cases and we're producing the list of those that haven't paid, and we look down through it, every case we look at, we see the history of the contact, and invariably you can see that there is somebody struggling. But unless they actually come forward and say, I need help, we can't force somebody to apply for relief. We can't force somebody to go to Advice NI or go to DFCs, make the call. We would love to be able to say, look, leave it with me and I'll pass your details on. We need that individual repair or business to say, I need help with this. At that stage, we can then trigger our support mechanisms, and we can then look at, well, what can we do to help you with a payment plan? Unfortunately, payment plans, while they'll help the repair at that time, they accumulate and they become year-end debt, and they carry forward, and that's the situation. And we're sort of double whammied, where we're getting an image of not collecting, but on the other hand, we've got the supportive image that we're trying to provide as well. So for me, it's about getting the repair business or individual to come forward and seek that help. There are channels we can, as I say, there's those channels that are outside of our control, but there are rate relief schemes that maybe some aren't aware that they are entitled to or are eligible for, and we can help them, talk them through that. But the biggest one is the payment plan. So for me, it's about ensuring that something that we offer them is beneficial in terms of reduction of what they owe, and is sustainable and affordable for them. There's absolutely no point in us setting up an arrangement with somebody who'll make one payment and then just stop. So it's about that honesty. We're there to help where we can.
And just one final point on that, Harry. When we were developing this year's action plan, Chris did have conversations with Advice NI about our approach, and we will continue to work with them and with other advice organisations on the best way to support those people that need it.
If I can just finish, Chair.
Of course, yeah.
Is there ever a time when, for example, the debt would be written off and start again because it would be too great, or for a reason?
So, there are reasons, and within our write-off policy, we have the legal reasons, and we have also administrative reasons. The administrative reasons are very strictly controlled, in the sense that the repair, we aren't able to find them. They're living outside of jurisdiction where it's uneconomical for us to recover. However, the majority of cases, if somebody is just struggling to pay, what we'll try and do is get them an affordable payment plan.
Yeah.
We'll not move to write-off on those cases.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Owen.
Thank you, Chair. And it's actually just following up, I think, on a question that you had raised initially, and that is just around the analysis that's undertaken. So is there any intention to look, particularly on the business rate side, at whether there are any trends in particular sectors of non-payment, and is there any interrelationship then between the work that you do around unpaid rates and informing the strategic rating review, where that may indicate actually that there needs to be more fundamental change to the system?
I mean, I know Andrew was with you last week, and Andrew is part of developing and considering the reviews of the rating policies. Will also look at things like payments and who benefits from reliefs and whatever as part of the whole package. Again, it's a good point that you make, Owen, because what Chris and his team are going to look at next is how we stratify who pays across different areas, across different businesses and whatever, to get a fuller picture. And we would hope to start to publish as much information as possible, not just in terms of the broad rates of collections, but also by local council and different, I suppose, demographics and whatever. So it's part of a plan of more transparency, really, in terms of this, because it feels sometimes like it's a mystery, but it's an incredibly complex methodology, an incredibly complex system, and it can be very difficult to get it presented in a way that's easy understood. So we're trying very hard to look at how we do that and communicate more, so that people have a better understanding of what's happening.
Can I just add as well, Andrew, as Sharon has said, Andrew would also be heavily involved with our LPS statisticians, and they do an enormous amount of work in terms of understanding the underlying data. So all of our figures, all of the information that we present, particularly in our AQs, AQWs, AQOs, are all tested in terms of the data, the underlying information, and that also will then help Andrew inform policy decisions as well. So it is heavily analysed.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just on the 10-year cycle, which has for some people, I have to say, probably including myself, seemed like quite a long time to be taking a decision on whether to make fundamental change. Were you involved? Did you give a view that 10 years was necessary? You know, obviously you're involved in the collection. Was the 10 year? Was that a recommendation made by yourselves?
That predated me.
Okay.
So no, I wasn't part of that.
Was it your predecessor who made that advice? Do you think?
It predated me. I'm not actually sure who got it. I assume it was my predecessor. Yes.
No, Chris.
No, I'm on the collection side, so the policy sides.
Yeah.
Would you think, as someone who's involved in collection, obviously, because this is part of what might kind of part of what advises the policy, as you just said, in terms of keeping in touch with Andrew McAvoy, and the policy is driven by what's practical, what rates are collectible, the information on how you might broaden the tax base, increase revenue, support economic activity, whatever the outcome is driven in part by collections data. So would it be your view that the 10 years is necessary to come up with?
So I think the Minister has already indicated that the 10-year timeline is not one that he has in his purview. From my point of view, heading LPS, we are actively looking at how quickly we can bring forward further rating policy reviews. I'm not on a 10-year trajectory at all. We're currently reviewing, as you know, the SBBR and the NDVR. We'll then turn our mind to what comes next, and we'll continue to review. The choice for what reviews obviously is for the Minister, but it will take account of all of what you've said, Chair. You know, in terms of small business rate review, for example, was a decision to review that was taken in the context of the autumn budget last year and the impact of that more broadly. So all of these things are considered in the round rather than just ticking off a list of policy reviews that need to be done. But we have moved away completely from a 10-year position. I'm
just interested where that came from then. If it's not the ministers and it's not LPS's, where did this 10-year come from?
It certainly was a position at a point in time, and I think what it was trying to illustrate, from my understanding, is that it takes a length of time to run through a policy process, consultation, and then also to allow a new policy decision to be embedded and understand not just the intentional impact of that, but the unintentional impact. So given that there are 19 policies, that felt like a reasonable amount of time so that you weren't rushing. We have 4 at the minute. It takes an awful lot of work, analysis, consideration in order to bring the policy position to get that cleared and then to implement that for the next year in the rates bills. The further consideration is the impact on that on ratepayers, because if you have a number of different policy changes that's going to have a cumulative impact on a ratepayer, we need to be mindful of that there isn't too big of an impact at once. So that's my understanding of why it was a 10-year process, to allow for that consideration and implementation, but also the impact of that to be felt. And those factors we'll still be mindful of those in terms of our policy development and implementation as we move forward in accordance with the Minister's wishes.
Okay, so the 10-year cycle emerged in the confusing metaphors. The 10-year cycle was announced as part of the strategic roadmap. I'm not sure which of those is active travel in terms of rates, or if either of those is qualifies into the active travel budget. So maybe I'm being facetious, but are we still in the cycle? Where are we in the cycle now? I'm just intrigued as to where, because this was announced in December, nearly just under less than a year ago.
The Minister's absolutely committed, and LPS is absolutely committed to a cycle of reviews.
Yeah, okay.
It's the 10 years that we're not wedded to.
Yeah, okay. So the 10 years, we can bin that then. The cycle
of reviews is what we're currently in at the minute.
We're still in a cycle of reviews, but the 10 years has been, we've lost the 10 year. Is there, but we aren't yet at a point where there's been a decision. So as of last autumn, it was first mooted there was going to be changes. Obviously, way back in February, even before the restoration of the executive, this was all discussed and lots of these things were consulted on at the behest of the NIO. Then restoration happened, commitment to revenue raising and looking at various things. New consultations began later last year. There was the announcement of the strategic roadmap, the 10-year cycle, which isn't a 10-year cycle anymore, it's just a cycle. But as of yet, the then minister, last minister, indicated she was minded to take action on early repayment and the max cap domestically. There's subsequently been additional consultations on NDVR and small business rates relief. But on none of those things has there been a decision by the executive. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
So we have had now 3 or 4 maybe different consultations, like big consultations with different consultations in that. We've had the announcement of a strategic roadmap, a 10-year cycle, which is no longer a cycle. Indicative announcements that at some point in the future we may do something on these various different things, ending early repayment, domestic cap, and now the 2 we're consulting on at the minute, but no actual decision has been made to do any of this.
The executive has not made a decision on any policy change.
We had an update on a couple of weeks ago. What is your latest understanding of when the executive might discuss these things?
That's not something that I would have an understanding of.
That would be is that policy? That would be Andrew's side of the house, or would you be across?
No. Policy. I have the policy part as well, but I'm not cited on when it is on the executive agenda.
So it's not imminent. Then you would know if it was happening in the next week or two. You would.
I'm not cited. I didn't say it wasn't imminent, Chair.
Okay.
I said I'm not cited.
You're not cited. Okay. Can we be told as soon as that? Now, I don't know if that's proper, but certainly I think as the committee would be really keen to know whenever we're going to get a decision, because I do just think between cycles, roadmap, and I think there's lots of good work that's going on, and you've given us a really interesting and thorough presentation today, but I'm a wee bit baffled by the transport metaphors, and so in terms of understanding what the executive's actual direction on big rating decisions is, I think it would be really helpful to get an update whenever there is one. And maybe of course they'll be telling the public, but
I think our focus as officials is on discharging a responsibility to bring forward the work that allows these decisions to be made. And I'm very clear that we are ambitious in that regard. And in terms of, Andrew was here with you quite recently in terms of the 2 recent SBBR and NDVR. We've undertaken the review over the summer months and done quite a considerable consideration on that, and the considerations are with the Minister, will be with the Minister for consideration, but that's as far as I can promise you, I would say. Well,
I appreciate you answering the question. In case, just on one final thing before we release you, is on relation to I think it's fair to call it now a controversial project, and I was actually, myself and Brian, who's not with us at the minute, we're in a meeting on a related subject earlier on, which is Tribeca, or what's called Tribeca. Loads of properties around there were getting basically relief on assets that should not, they were getting inappropriate relief, I think it's fair to say, on and there were subsequent investigations by LPS. Can I ask, are you satisfied now that none of the properties in those areas are getting reliefs that they shouldn't be getting, or reliefs that perhaps are not justified?
I can't say that about any property anywhere because of changes that might happen at any given time. What I can say is that the properties are assessed based on the evidence and the understandings that we have available, and that's as much as I can provide assurance on, I'm afraid, Chair.
Okay, I may correspond with you on that, because I think it would be helpful to have an update, just because we did look at a range of areas, a range of things where it was a bit concerning, frankly, the amount of rates relief, and given basically this is an area, Belfast City Centre, where there's now increasing antisocial behaviour, and it's a huge asset for this region, and it's drifting into dereliction. It was just very concerning that there seemed to be a lot of relief being given to developers who were not developing a huge and important set of sites in the middle of our city. But thank you very much for that. I appreciate your taking our questions. I'll correspond with you on that separately. Okay. Any new members have indicated they have any further questions, so we will release you at this stage, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Thanks very much. Are we going to undo everything?
So we'll go to the offer and then we'll go back.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Sharon. Really appreciate that. So agenda item 9 is September Outturn and Forecast Outturn. It's a written briefing. So page 219 of the tabled pack, there's a briefing paper from the Department of Finance on 25-26 public expenditure Outturn and Forecast Outturn. As usual, the department has reported on 4 expenditure categories: non-ring-fenced resource DEL, ring-fenced resource DEL, capital DEL and FTC. Detailed tables broken down by category and department are provided. The detailed departmental breakdowns in Annex A, at page 227 of the table pack, and it says that for non-ring-fenced resource DEL, overcommitments have reduced by 20 million in the last month. Ring-fenced resource DEL overcommitments have increased by 1.6 million. Capital DEL overcommitments have increased by 6.4 million. In relation to Outturn compared to monitoring position, for non-ring-fenced resource DEL, departments are forecasting a total easement of 6 million. The departmental positions are set out in Annex B at page 241 of the table pack. In respect of ring-fenced resource DEL, departments are forecasting a net easement of 11.2 million. The departmental positions are set out in Annex C at page 247. In capital DEL, departments are forecasting a total easement of 28 million. So that's in September. That's not necessarily the same as their full-blown monitoring return. That's September.
So far.
Yeah. Departmental positions are set out in Annex D, 25, which is a 253 of the table pack. In terms of financial transactions, capital departments are forecasting outturns in line with the June monitoring position. Members, are we agreed to forward this to other statutory committees first of all? I presume so. And the audit committee. And does anybody wish to say anything about this? No. I think at this stage it will be. It's important, obviously, that we will get evidence soon, I imagine, in the run up to what will now be a December monitoring round, and that will obviously include all of the various questions we have about the level of overall we discussed earlier on, about the level of overall pressures and some of the other outstanding questions, including reduced requirements potentially for the A5, and indeed the question about the PSNI data breach monies.
Chair, that's likely to be a very, very busy point. Because everything the Finance Minister has said previously suggests he is still intending to bring a draft budget at the start of December, when likely you would get report on the monitoring rounds. So there will be a lot of data traffic and information going on.
So we will be getting, in all probability, currently both within a week or two of one another, draft budget, draft multi-year budget, and quite a big December monitoring round. So we need to be
the Minister on the 10th of December as well, so that might well be very timely.
Yeah, good, very timely. Yeah. Okay, members, we're now going to move on to, we're going to go back to matters arising, and we'll get through them hopefully promptly. Okay. There are a lot, yeah, okay, sorry. Bear with me, going back to the start of the script. Okay. Agenda 5.1 is from the Minister of Finance, and it relates to Horizon IT failures, the Horizon system failures, and our corresponding with them, reflecting members' views on it. So that's at page 60 of the meeting pack, members. We have response from the Minister to our correspondence on the role of Fujitsu in the Horizon scandal, and our request for ongoing updates from Sir Wynne Williams' review. The Minister's indicated the inquiry is likely to publish its findings either at the end of 25 or the beginning of 2026. The Minister has assured officials that will keep us up to date. So I think that's to note, but the fact that we've asked to be kept abreast, and he will keep us abreast, I think is important, and I can suggest we keep a close watching brief on that, and we are obviously going to be updated as soon as that report's membership intent. Okay, 5.2 is from the department, and it relates to the administrative officer recruitment pilot summary. This is a new administrative process for recruiting AOs, administrative officers, into the Northern Ireland Civil Service. The proposed approach will utilise technology-enabled recruitment processing. Design work is underway to determine the precise technology deployment approach which best fits the needs of the NICS, expected to be completed by 7th November. The indicative timetable includes a launch by the end of October, recruitment day in Derry, Londonderry on the 27th of November, with candidates informed of the outcome within 48 hours and allocated to posts by January 26th. The pilot is expected to cost 49,000, cutting cost per hire by 30 to 40%. Okay. Yeah, okay, bring in Deputy Chair on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on this one, I wonder, would we be able to ask, is there anything to back up the need for the sub-regional approach in this? It's quite a substantive, a piece to take forward, and it's great to see the pilot, but to have it away up in the northwest, and I obviously represent South Down and in the southeast, it's pretty much excluding people from certain parts of Northern Ireland. So I just wondered, was there an assessment of need for that particular grade there, or why that investment was there?
Well, I mean, I think in fairness, I think, well, I can let the department answer for themselves, but I don't think that precludes them doing recruitment days in other places. I don't think they're saying we're only doing one in Derry, to be fair, and obviously being the party I'm in, I have to always speak up for Derry. And I think that's important. So I think it's important that we get people recruited in Derry, and we get people, and to be honest, given the people in Derry, it's quite an effort for them to get down to Belfast. I think that's not unfair, but we can ask about whether other work is going on. I would be interested, just for my own interest, and I'll bring in Gemma and others of this, what that and Harry, what we, so the delivery, the delivery partner is an organisation called, is an entity called Talent Dog. What? Talent Dog is the name of the.
It is, yes.
No,
Talent
that's one of them.
Dogs,
Sorry, that's
yeah.
one of them. That's what more recent. I've engaged a delivery partner. Talent Dog this is for the AO recruitment. So I would like to understand what it is the Talent Dog. So we've been given in this brief from the department, given that they've told us about it, they've given us quite a lot of what I think you can call management speak, rather than an explanation of what Talent Dog is and does. It says Talent Dog helps employers to reimagine and transform their in-house recruitment. Now, that's fair enough, but that sounds like a brochure for Talent Dog rather than a plain English explanation of what Talent Dog is or does. So I'd like that, please, including whether it does AI.
So, Gemma first,
Gemma, then
Jerry, not Harry.
Gemma, then Jerry. Okay.
Sorry, just before I leave, just in response to Deputy Chair, welcome to my world. Excluding other people from the north of Ireland. So, on that note, very good, Billy, because
I think that's the message.
Message for Jerry.
Yeah, kind of following on from yourself, Chair, about Talent Dog. I've never heard of them, and I don't know what their involvement is in this. So clarity on that, and also, if I'm reading this correct, so it takes roughly 11 months to fill an AO post, but Talent Dog are coming in and they can fill posts 6 weeks. Like, I mean, I'm not advocating they should be paid more with a £50,000 payment. Why can't the department do this internally?
I think this is the expectation with the AO recruitment is that it'll be not unlike the EO2 recruitment, which saw thousands and thousands of applications for a much smaller number of posts. So just to try and manually do all that would have been, as they say, would have been so much more expensive and taken a lot longer. So with these new online systems, they can sift and shortlist a lot faster. But I think, Chair, generally it would be useful to know what exactly a Talent Dog does.
Yes, and I think just give it, like, I think this, I'm not, certainly speaking personally, I would not be opposed to using a tool that will, I think we need to get more people into the civil service.
Is it AI?
Is it AI?
What is it?
And then you'll also questions.
And it as well, just add in, Chair, like, do they have control over or ownership over some of that data? I don't know. So
that's a fair question. I think that's a fair question. There's also questions about, I presume it'll be consistent with the quality practices and all that.
Chair, we can confirm they are an AI-powered recruitment technology.
Yeah, well, I think that would have been. I think that was obvious.
Approach.
That was obvious from what they said.
About that, sure.
I think that was obvious, but the department has sent us a paper without saying that, and that's the most basic bit of information. I would say, like, I have lots of concerns about our complacency in relation to AI, speaking for myself, but it clearly is going to hugely improve processes in certain things, it is not inherently bad, but it's not always necessarily one for us just to wade through without understanding if there are other, and given that they flagged this to us, they'll have to give us a bit more information. So can we ask all those questions about
Sorry, one final one, just because the last AO process, we had a lot of emails, I'm sure others did, about people who were going through the interview processing and locked out effectively of that. So can we ask that, how that has been legislated for in this talent dog world, or whatever the correct phraseology is there. Thanks.
Yes, indeed. I think that's yeah. I think we do need to ask some more questions about what talent dog is. Yeah, and then we'll find out more about that. Okay, right. The members happy enough. We'll move on now. Yeah, we'll get. So we're going to get that anyway. So seek members' agreement that we'll get a written update in the pilot in January 26th. But before then, I want more detail on what talent dog is and how, and whether the department is any safeguards that the department has put in place or has felt the need to get assurances on in relation to data protection, and also how it fits in with kind of the department's equality obligations. We can ask the question that the Deputy Chair flagged as well about whether other recruitment days are taking place. Okay, so 5.3 is in relation to shared property management and the publication of a scoping study. So members, on page 66 of the pack, the department has provided an update on respect of the work of the regulation, has provided an update in respect of work on the regulation of shared property management. The Minister has considered options as detailed in a scoping report and directed the department to establish a dedicated team with the appropriate skills and expertise to take forward further work. It is anticipated that this team will be in place in the 26 to 27 financial year in order that policy work can take place ahead of legislative reform. At that stage, further engagement will take place with a range of stakeholders, including homeowners, building on the initial engagement undertaken as part of the study. I don't understand am I being really stupid, probably, what the legislative reform is that requires. It's to do with the landlord legislation. Yeah. They've misspelled landlord. Okay, fine. We looked into that separately. I mean, actually, it would just be helpful to have confirmation that this can't. If they actually are planning legislation on this, it's clearly not going to be. It'll be next mandate. Very clearly.
There's no way that can be done this mandate, Chair, because it's not happening till the 26, 27.
Also, provisions bill potentially.
No, well, it's bound by when the work is actually taking place, so it won't happen until the next mandate.
So, it's been quite a long time for this to get to us. Yeah, I suppose that if they could confirm that that this is effectively background scoping work ahead of potential action by a future minister in a new mandate, that would be helpful, I guess. Yeah. I mean, that maybe we don't even need that. Maybe that's obvious anyway.
We can just get a confirmation.
Just like a verbal confirmation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm slightly concerned that this is drifting and sort of. Okay, that's to note. 5.4 is Department of Finance it's an update on again the legislative programme for autumn/winter 25-26. That's at page 87 of the meeting pack. Members will recall last week's meeting we were due to receive a written briefing on the legislative programme. It was not received in time. This is it. The written briefing was sent to the committee the day after the meeting last week, and it is included for members' consideration. I should have said, is it page 87? Unless I did say that. And it includes, the primary legislation is there. We know what they are. We were discussing them today. Fiscal Council and Administrative Provisions Bill and Financial Provisions Bill. And also there is a Marriage and Civil Partnerships Bill, which apparently has been drafted and is going to be approved by the Executive in the next month. The secondary legislation is at Annex A, and it includes the various things that need to, the various bits of secondary legislation, one of which is the extension of the coronavirus provisions. Another one is the whole government accounts designation, which is a relatively frequent thing that we have to deal with here. And then there are also various land registry ones, which I think are all quite routine, other than the land registry fees, which are via affirmative legislation, but they're again relatively routine. But does anyone wish to comment on those? Okay. 5.5 is so yes, sorry members, if we're agreed, the department will we will ask the department for an indicative timetable for the legislative changes, an indicative timetable for legislative stages for the Marriage and Civil Partnership Bill, assuming executive approval is obtained in November 2025. Agreed?
Thank you.
Okay, Department of Finance, legislative stages for the Deaths, Stillbirths and Baby Loss Bill. Members, that's on page 91 of the pack. The Department of Finance has confirmed that consideration stage of the bill is scheduled for 4th November 2025 and that it has proposed the following dates for the next stages. Further consideration stage 18th is the 18th of November, and the final stage will either be the 1st or the 2nd of December. The Department has also confirmed the timescales for the implementation of the provisions of the bill, including the implementation of a baby loss, remain on target and will not, excuse me, go back, I'm misreading this document a lot today. The Department has also confirmed the timescales for the implementation of the provisions of the bill, including the implementation of the baby loss scheme, remain on target. Now, there's a related item, which is 5.6, and it's the notice of amendments for consideration stage of the Deaths, Stillbirths and Baby Loss Bill. That's at page 92 of the meeting pack, which includes notice of opposition to Clause 8 to the bill. That is for members to note, except I would say I'm concerned that members or a particular member is using this bill to put forward very ideological and I think in the context of what this bill is fundamentally about, quite insensitive amendments, but that's my personal opinion. That's to note otherwise.
Can I just ask a question through you to the Clerk Chair? I mean, the deadline for amendment I think was today on this bill. Do we know when we're likely to see the marshalled list?
Oh, no, there's a question. We can check with the business office and I'll put a message out, but I would have thought reasonably, well, recess will impact potentially.
Yeah. Just with recess falling.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Let me come back. I'll come back on the WhatsApp on that when I talk to business office.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, members. So the 5.7 is a Dallow extract, and it relates to the meeting. Sorry, this is going back to February. It's something that came back to us from February 2025. It's at page 93 of the meeting pack. There's an extract of a Dallow request following the meeting on the 12th of February. At that time, the committee requested that the department provides us with regular updates on expenditure resting in the sole authority of the Budget Act, which obviously relates to the provisions in the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. So 5.8 goes through some of those for us, and that's at page 94 of the meeting pack. It sets out what the position was at the 31st of July 2025. They've also provided an update on the 31st of October 2025, which reflects the expected timescale for the Fiscal Council and Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. So this is it's all set out the various expenditures that are happening under the sole authority of the Budget Act as of now, for members to note. Okay, happy enough. The next agenda item is a Dallow extract from our meeting the 1st of October. That's at page 103 of the meeting pack. The department has provided a response to two requests made during the meeting on the 1st of October 25, and these follow. Members, the response is in relation to two other queries. One is in relation to a reserve claim on the redress scheme. That's a different reserve claim, is it, to the PSNI one? And the other is on the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. Those are still outstanding. So members will recall that we still haven't received a response in relation to the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill. We raised this at our meeting on the 24th of September. We have obviously subsequently, in our chat with the ESR, requested a further legal update or a legal opinion on that bill.
Just
yes,
jump in. The reserve claim was about the committee had asked whether there would be any reserve claim potential for the redress schemes for the mother
and baby home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we still haven't the response. I think that's probably going to be a really more of a complex one to get an answer on.
So, yeah. Okay. So we asked whether. Okay. So we agreed that last week we agreed the committee would write to the Dallow highlighting the needs for responses to members' bill queries to be returned to us in timely fashion and fully furnishing the committee with the information we need. So we're really just at this stage, I guess the request is other than chivying them again and saying we really need this information. If members are happy that we do that again, but I think put on the record that we do take the tardiness in relation to all of these very seriously, and we expect to be kept abreast. It's also worth saying that we only got an update on the PSNI we only got it this week, and I think it's probably fair to say that we got it after the BBC presumably someone in or close to the Department of the Executive had leaked it to the BBC, and then we got a very short thing telling us what the Treasury view had been. So we need to be the first port of call for this information rather than the last. 5.10 is a readout response in relation to the dilapidation bill. That's on page 104 of the meeting pack. The committee previously asked for any associated modelling relating to the financial impact of the bill, i.e. I think the question was whether they anticipated that bringing properties out of dilapidation back into use would mean they were rateable and therefore generating revenue. The Department has replied that the financial impact of the dilapidation bill and any associated modelling is a matter for the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Whilst the measures in the bill have the potential to facilitate dilapidated properties coming back into use, it is premature to model any likely financial impact from the DOF perspective, including the likely level of additions to rating valuations for such properties. I would just say, I suppose, maybe I'm being unreasonable, the first response is just, this is a matter for ERA. The second response was, it's too early to say. The second response kind of contradicts the first, because they're sort of saying, well, fair enough, clearly they acknowledge there's a reason for us to ask the question. And this is the kind of thing I would think where some kind of joined up, non-silo department, this might be the kind of thing where one would think finance should be right in there saying, right, is there any potential revenue benefit for us here in terms of properties coming out of dilapidation? But unfortunately it does seem to be, as per always, pretty siloed, but that's just a personal opinion. Okay, members, now we're going to go on to another DALO readout response, which is at page 105. That relates to the land registration legislation project, which is not that easy to say after a long few weeks in the Assembly. That's at page 105 of the meeting pack. The committee previously considered a written briefing on the land registration legislation project and asked for further update with the consultation responses once they had been analysed. Members also asked for projected savings and if any procurement was anticipated. The Department has highlighted the procurement process has concluded and a delivery partner appointed. The committee was briefed on this process at its meeting on the 9th of April. Previous correspondence has been provided for new members of the committee, page 106. A review of anticipated benefits considering the final design specification is near conclusion, and LPS is happy to provide further information to the committee on the outcome of that review in the coming weeks. Okay, so if members are content, we'll add that to the forward work programme. But yeah,
maybe just highlight at this point, we expect the Marshall list potentially by tomorrow afternoon if there's a fair wind behind it. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Right, okay. So, members, 5.12 relates to tech secure digital infrastructure and cybersecurity in Northern Ireland's community and voluntary sector. Members, that's at page 107 of the meeting pack. Bytes Secure has written to the committee about an initiative called Tech Secure. The evidence that is produced around digital infrastructure and cybersecurity risks across the community and voluntary sector and lack of funding for Northern Ireland in this regard. The Chief Executive has asked for an opportunity to provide further briefing to the committee on how the community and voluntary sector's digital capacity can be strengthened. There's no real policy focus for us in this, so we will forward it to the Communities Committee if people are content. Department of Finance, the next agenda item, the next matter arises in the tabled pack, and it's the Public Office Accountability Bill. It's in page 4 of the tabled pack. The Department has laid a memorandum for this bill, Understanding Order 42A. This is not a legislative consent memorandum and does not begin the countdown to a committee report. There are other misconceptions in the memorandum, interestingly, which the clerk has highlighted to us. Members will recall this deals with institutional failings highlighted by things like Hillsborough, Grenfell, infected blood scandal and Windrush. So there are errors in what has been provided to us. So I might ask the clerk to give us an assessment of that.
Clarita, Tom and I met with officials this morning just to point out that there were some misconceptions in the memorandum they laid around things that would happen and various other processes under Standing Order 42A, which governs the legislative consent memorandum and motion process. So I think they're straight now. What we will seek from the Business Office.
What can you tell us what they were?
So it was a misapprehension on the committee's report starting now. So they'd suggested that this memorandum would trigger our report and that our report would contribute, along with the risk assessment, to the executive's decision as to whether or not it wanted to support and bring forward a legislative consent memorandum. This is not a legislative consent memorandum, so it doesn't trigger the report. This is, I'm going to get really annoyingly technical here, they have laid this under Standing Order 42A 4B. They would have had to lay it under Standing Order 42A 4A for it to be a legislative consent memorandum. They would have had to be seeking legislative consent, and they would also have had to have been a draft motion. So it was just a misunderstanding on their part as to what they were triggering. They also indicated that they would bring a motion under 42A 9. 42A9 is subsequent motions. It's not the draft motion that would be contained within 42A 4A. Hopefully you're still with me. So it's not unusual, well, it's unusual enough for us, but it's not unusual for a bill that's within the legislative consent process to be further amended to a degree where a department thinks there's a lot going on here that impacts on us. We're bringing a further motion for debate. So I pointed out to them that was actually the reference they were using, when in reality they're talking about an initial report, and because they haven't initiated the timescale for our committee report, they were kind of misconceiving when that was going to happen in the process. So they are sorted out now, and I'm going to communicate with the Business Office as to whether the memorandum needs relayed because there was some misconceptions in it. However, we're getting our briefing on this one on our first meeting back. So it'll put committee in a position where they can take an initial view on whether they are comfortable with the likelihood that there'll be a legislative consent motion coming forward to bring certain aspects of the bill into the devolved remit here. It's quite a technical, but members do have a fairly good understanding of the general overarching issues, because there's been a lot of discussion in the media around what's been called the Candor Bill, and this is coming to fruition. Just might be worth pointing out at the same time that Health is looking to bring forward its own bill, but that will kind of be after we've worked out all the provisions within this one, and then Health will legislate beyond that.
Okay.
If that makes any sense whatsoever, Chair.
It does, as long as you have no follow-up questions. Okay. Very good. So members will note the memorandum and request the officials attend our meeting on the 5th of November to provide a detailed oral briefing, and we will obviously have the opportunity to talk through all the legal permutations. Then obviously it's important that we get this right given the fiasco over the previous LCM.
Sure, it's also worth flagging up at this stage that there are elements of this that will impact on the devolved settlement being brought in subsequent amendments, so officials will cover all that as well. That just makes the process a bit more complex, annoyingly.
Okay. Next is 5.14, which is reform of building regulations. That's at page 10 of the table pack. Members will recall the Communities Committee recently wrote to the department, that's the Finance Department, seeking an update on the reform of building regs. The department has indicated that a detailed Phase 2 response document has been provided to the Executive for agreement. Upon approval, both the Finance and Communities Committees will be provided with details on proposed future uplifts and associated milestones, delivery dates. So I think the answer to that is there's not very much in terms of solid dates. So the next agenda item is from the Minister of Economy. The Minister has formally responded to the recommendations within the committee's inquiry report on banking and financial services. The Minister has highlighted work by her department, including access to finance, portfolio and debt, including access to finance, portfolio and debt, equity funds to support startups and SMEs, funding for growth programmes and credit union modernisation, public consultation, the way forward paper for the latter being published in the next few weeks. So I would say this is fine as far as it goes, but I have two questions. One, first of all, have we received anything yet from the Department of Finance in terms of a formal response to our committee report?
No, because we asked in that one for the Finance Minister to do a fair bit of liaising with other ministers.
Yeah.
That's going to take part inputs, and that will take probably a bit of time.
Okay. I think it's just worth saying to the department, it's like I'm really, really keen that we don't let this really important bit of work just kind of drift as like, look, we did a bit of colouring in, kind of put it with a magnet in the fridge. I think like this is substantive. So the Minister clearly is doing specific things, but she is involved in the banking roundtable, although it's convened by the Minister of Finance. I'm not totally convinced that our specific recommendation, which is you at an executive level take take seriously our proposal that you lobby the Financial Inclusion Committee, the FCA, the Bank of England, the Central Bank in Dublin, whoever it is, the various different parties to address these issues. I personally don't there's not important things happening. So my suggestion would be that we forward this letter to the department and say we are very clear that we want a substantive response to the actions suggested in our committee report, not just with respect to not just a kind of broad, bland, positive, here, let me tell you some of the things I'm doing, in this area. They're not important things. I just think we should be really trying to get an actual substantive response in the way that, for example, the PAC would require a specific response to recommendations we've made. If members are content. Deputy Chair.
Do you mean forward the Economy Minister's letter to the Finance
Yes,
Minister?
to the extent that we have said the Finance Minister chairs the banking roundtable. We are the Finance Committee. Our view. I'm not suggesting we go and say this is unsatisfactory or lambast the Economy Minister. My own view is that this isn't. If I read that, I wouldn't necessarily think, they're taking it really seriously and they want to take forward our proposals. So I think it's the Finance Minister and the Finance Department's job primarily to take forward the proposal. So I think we should use this as an opportunity to say, we note this response from the Economy Minister, but in your response to us, which we are still expecting, we want concrete, practical responses to the recommendations we have made, not just like a summary response telling us what you're already doing. Yes.
Yeah, well, I would say, note it, but I would also welcome it because it is quite a quick response, to have got it through from the Economy Minister on the issue, but I would note it and welcome it, and it is only a few weeks as well till the Finance Minister is here, so hopefully then that would give him a chance to maybe respond, but we could certainly, I think that would be a key theme of questions when he's in the committee.
There's also a huge amount hopefully will come out of the credit unions consultation. That's still, I can't remember when the consultation closed, but I think it's still being unpacked. I don't know if the Economy Committee has had an analysis of responses yet, because there's legislation will come on that, and I would have thought there's potential there for not necessarily amending it, but seeking to augment it.
Sure. Okay. The point I would make, it's good to get a prompt response, but the response or the department's response, the minister's response, doesn't actually reference our report. So I think sometimes our expectation should be a quick response is good, but a response that is both quick and substantively responds to the points we've raised in our inquiry is not too much to expect. So I think if members are content, we just flag it, but say we expect from the lead minister, who in this case is the Minister of Finance, specific responses. And then after that, we may want to forward it to the Economy Committee, but people are happy enough. I'm happy. Okay.
I think that it'll have been copied to them.
Yeah. Okay. Grand. Excellent. Thank you. So the next is I'm glad to hear that that we're going to get the paper on credit unions coming forward soon. I think that's welcome news. 5.16 is Committee of Infrastructure, Water, Sustainable Drainage and Flood Management Bill. That's at page 15 of the table pack. The Infrastructure Committee has launched its call for evidence on the Water, Sustainable Drainage and Flood Management Bill and is seeking the views of this committee. So this is really just for permission that we ask the department if they have any locus. I'm not sure what that would be, but there might potentially be.
Potentially be something, Chair. That just means that the committee has something to think about in making a response. Okay.
Great. 5.17, read out response from the 8th of October meeting. On page 70 of the pack, the table pack, sorry, the department has provided a response to 3 points raised by during the meeting on the 8th of October, 2 of which concern the Fiscal Council and therefore will be considered during that agenda item, which we may not actually get round to today, given where we are, but we're going to try to.
If we're fortunate, we might just get there, because that's...
Yeah, we will. We're going to committee Deliberations. Yeah, okay. It's really the response to the OECD. Okay, 5.18, performance appraisal for the head of the civil service. That is at page 72 of the tabled pack. So the department has reiterated its previous response in relation to the head of the civil services appraisal arrangements at a time when the head of the civil service was also the TO permanent secretary. The Hawks position is unique in that the role has no line manager structure or reporting officer in countersigning officer to undertake the normal appraisal process as provided for under the current performance management policy. The performance process applied to other SCS roles was therefore not applied to Hawks during this time. This unique nature is the rationale for no informal appraisal processes and for Hawks not being subject to box marking for pay. To put it mildly, I'm slightly bemused by some of what's in this response, but I think we will have the opportunity in our inquiry later this year to interrogate these. It's just not totally plausible for me, to be perfectly honest. Anyway. Okay, that's to note, unless anybody else wishes to come in on it. Now, we are going to go to page 8, and we're going to go to committee deliberations. We're going to do a bit on the Fiscal Council bill before the end of the meeting. So members, at page 113 of the, and while we're still core, at 113 of the meeting pack, there is a transcript of the oral evidence session we had with the Scottish Fiscal Commission not last week, 2 weeks ago. So members, if we're agreed, that transcript will be added to the evidence base for the committee stage of the bill. The issues raised will be added to the bill table. And if any members wish to raise anything or talk about what we heard, I think it was a useful session from the Scottish Fiscal Commission. I think they gave us several things to think about. Page 88 of the table pack, the department has provided its formal response to the OECD submission on the bill. So if you go to 88 of the table pack, you will see the department, the very helpful breakdown is where the department has given us their response to the commentary by the OECD. For example, in terms of legislative support at 5.2, they say they make a point which is quite an interesting one actually, which is it says that the OECD critique of the bill had been that it doesn't include explicit on the face of the bill provision for responding to requests for assembly committees or members. The department points out that the Northern Ireland Act 1998, section 44, which famously rarely used, but there as a backup, provides the power to summon witnesses and request documents to support a scrutiny function. Therefore, the NI Fiscal Council must respond to requests from any all committees in relation to discharge of its functions. Can I just ask, is it the case that they're not subject to section 44 now, but they would be? No,
they are.
But as of now, are they as of now?
Oh yes, as of now, because it's a public body, so you can be someone. But I think it's maybe it's an interesting application of section 44, because section 44 is essentially in response to not getting papers or persons and you getting into a process of saying, right, we want this specific thing, we want it done at a certain time, and ultimately if that has not been achieved, you can go to the High Court. That has never happened, but I think it's kind of the sledgehammer to crack a nut. We know it's very unlikely that the Fiscal Council wouldn't respond to a request, and certainly, and I can't speak for members because I don't know if members are asking them questions. I've never had a refusal to respond to any of the questions I've sent. So I think it's that difference between culture and what it says in the bill.
Yeah.
And maybe that is something for committee to think about. Obviously, when we go through the clause by clause early stages, these are the issues we'll look at and bring up. But it is an interesting thought, and it is just interesting how the department has cited section 44 there, because that is kind of the extreme, having to take this to serious action, which you wouldn't really expect to get to.
Indeed, and I would say that there's also the question we need to consider about whether we are content that enough of the things are so culturally ingrained that you don't need explicit provisions in the face of the bill, but that you also have to understand that you're taking on the face that a future minister might not, use.
Sure, it might be an interesting point to ask this, and
budget report, for example.
Has a member ever put down a question that involves the Fiscal Council?
Who knows? Good question.
Because my assumption would be, because of its nature and the fact that it sits effectively within DOF, there wouldn't be an issue in getting a question answered, because it would be like any other public body. Well, that's an interesting one. I don't think anyone's. We can look and see if we can find anyone. I don't know if anyone's ever tried.
Okay, so the other red sign in their response was around, or one of the other reds was around the budget being set by the budget being set by the department rather than by the Assembly, to which they have, that wasn't red, actually that was amber, to which the department has just said quite tersely, information was previously provided to the committee regarding this matter. Stop asking us this question. Fair enough. Well, look, that's all ready for members to consider, and we'll have obviously longer options to talk about that. Are there any other issues people want to raise? Okay. In that case, we will. It will obviously all be added to the pack. So, member, yes, we've done that. Yeah. So, page 92 of the table pack, the department has provided its specific response to, this is subsequent to the OECD response. The department has provided its formal response to issues raised by members during the committee meeting on the 8th of October, including around delegated powers in the bill. One of which, as with the previous item, this will be added to the bill table to assist members' clause by clause consideration. So, members, does anybody wish to comment on any aspect of the department's response? Does anyone require any further information? One thing they do highlight is that a delegated power was omitted from the delegated powers memorandum. So, therefore, a revised delegated powers memorandum has been sent to the committee. Does anybody wish to raise anything else? Nope. Okay. Obviously, we can raise this in further. These issues are there and will be in the bill pack for people to raise and discuss later on in our deliberations, should they wish to. Okay. So, members, we are going to ask if you're content, the examiner of statutory rules, whether she is content with the delegated powers memorandum, which has been revised to include the one that was previously omitted. People are content with that?
Content.
Page 22.
Yeah. Okay. So, if people are content with that, okay, great. We are going to go on now to just very briefly talk about civil service reform, which we talked about in our strategic session off camera earlier on. So, page 268, there's a tabled pack. Of the tabled pack is a Clerk's memo, which we discussed earlier on, around narrowing down or clarifying some of our priorities on the civil service reform piece. We talked about lots of things, including looking at strategic leadership within the civil service, sickness, absence, vacancy rates, but also some of the other things that have kind of been suggested to be part of this inquiry, including state strategy and more e-government a la places like Estonia. I think the decision we came to, the discussion was, we are better focusing on the people aspect of civil service reform rather than anything that could be labelled potential civil service reform. So things like state strategy, the Public Sector Transformation Board, all of those things are ancillary. It's not that we won't scrutinise them in other ways and places, but this will be specifically about people. So from leadership, the top of the civil service and how that's being managed, and we're going to have a load of permanent secretaries, I think, turning over fairly soon. That all the way down to what we were discussing earlier on, which is the AO recruitment cycle, and within that, vacancy levels, recruitment, the people strategy, and how well all that works from a kind of top to bottom, but effectively a kind of a people management look at civil service reform. People are happy enough with that summary?
Yeah, content. Sure. Just supposed to add around when looking at the recruitment stuff, because obviously there's sections like DFC in terms of contracts around Department of Work and Pensions, so just making sure that we're looking at all of those areas, even if they don't naturally fall directly onto the civil service in terms of temporary employment, and also keen in terms of underrepresented groups in the civil servant, or those in terms of progression at the lower scales and how they can progress up as well, particularly working class people, looking at it from a gender point of view. But I think the people focus is definitely the right one.
I think that we can definitely do some of that as well, and ask those questions about the diversity of the civil service and all that. Right, members content with that we took.
So, Chair, just to get agreement that we will bring forward a refined, people core focused proposal, and then we can move from there to some research, terms of reference, and so we bring that back for the first meeting after Halloween.
Okay, great. We have now done that, and I think we've agreed everything on that. Now we're just going to do correspondence really quickly. We'll get it done. Which is agenda. So item 11 is 11.1 is correspondence, which is from the business office. It's departmental minutes on contingent liabilities. That's at 133 of the table pack. Members, business office wishes to draw to our attention a Department of Economy minute on a contingent liability which was presented to the Assembly's business office on the 10th of October, and some procedural issues which arise. The Assembly has been informed of the Economy Department's proposal to provide a pension scheme letter of comfort for Tourism Northern Ireland. By way of background, in accordance with Managing Public Money NI guidance, when an executive department proposes to undertake a contingent liability in excess of 300,000 for which there is no specific statutory authority, the department concerned should present a departmental minute to the Assembly giving particulars of the liability created and explaining the circumstances. The guidance provides that the departmental minute should be copied to the chairs of both the Public Accounts Committee and the Departmental Committee. The guidance provides that the contingent liability should not go live until after 14 days after the minute has been presented. If a member of the Assembly or Committee objects in line with committee procedures, the guarantee or indemnity should be withheld pending examination of the objection. Now, as such, the Economy Committee and PAC can lodge objections. However, the Business Office is highlighting to this committee that there is no defined and agreed procedure in our standing orders by which an Assembly member or committee should raise an objection. Assembly questions are for seeking information from ministers, not for setting out objections of members. And given the 14-day working deadline, it may not be practical for a motion to be tabled. This would be a motion objecting to this contingent liability. In any case, Assembly agreement by resolution is not required for either a committee or a member to set out an objection. It should also be noted that Managing Public Money NI, guidance, envisages that the guarantee or indemnity should be withheld pending examination of an objection from a single member of the Assembly. So, and many members will be unaware of this minute. It is only those members who are members of the relevant committee who will have their attention drawn to the committee. In light of these issues, the Committee for Finance and the Public Accounts Committee may wish to consider whether the relevant arrangements for dealing with contingent liabilities are set out in this guidance are appropriate. So this is quite a strange one, I think it's fair to say.
It's an interesting one that's come up, and it came to light, Chair, because when we look back on this, and the Business Office looked back on this, there was no consistency to the approach that departments were taking. It's their guidance, however, it's managed by the Department of Finance, managing public money, not that it's owned by the Department of Finance effectively. But then there's no procedure for this in standing order, so effectively there isn't any kind of procedure for the Business Office to say, well, this is our procedure. So it's effectively trying to get departments to do things in a consistent way, because that hasn't been happening. And that's possibly best done through a Dear Accounting Officer letter, which would be in the realms of DOF. That would be probably consulted between Neil Gibson and Joanne McBurney before that would go out. So it's really just trying to establish what needs to be done. And the ask here is that potentially, if myself and the clerk to PAC get together, look at how this would best be done in terms of information for the committees. And I think in the terms of contingent liabilities, it's probably not enough just for it to be flagged up to PAC and the relevant Stat Committee. It should really be coming to the Finance Committee as well, because obviously contingent liability has an impact on the whole budget. So we, if members are content, we would look to discuss through what a best procedure for us is, try and get something organised through a Dear Accounting Officer, and then potentially look at something being put into standing orders, which would obviously be a much longer process. But at least if we get a Dear Accounting Officer, that will at least give a consistent approach for all the committees. Deputy Chair.
Deputy Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think definitely I would support that, especially as like reference here is to 14 days notice, which if that happens in a recess period, you've actually lost all capability of raising it anywhere.
But Jenna, this is the interesting thing we've talked about today with the write-off. Recess times don't count as part of your working days, so it would be stop at recess and start again. Even with that, there is no process to draw this to members' attention at the minute. It's very much when it's been laid. That's it. There's no publication or publicising of it. So it's trying to get a process that's usable. It's an issue that is of significant interest to not just to the relevant committee or the PAC, obviously to this committee, but to the House as a whole, knowing that these kinds of things are going on, and just to be aware and to keep track and so on.
Is it one through chair to link in with the TOA as well?
Yeah. We do that through the clerk there. So if members are agreed, we'll take that approach and we'll come back with where we can get a solution.
That sounds good. Okay. So now, grand. Now we're going to the table pack. Report of the Examiner for Statutory Rules, which is the 48th reports at page 275. There's nothing for us. Item 12, forward work programme, which the clerk will speak to.
Chair, there's nothing particularly new to highlight other than 5th of November we've now pretty much confirmed the
OECD.
We have got the OECD, right? Yeah, well, they're looking at the LCM, but when do we actually schedule the OECD?
It just says the 5th of November.
Has that been confirmed?
Yep.
It was confirmed,
Great.
wasn't it? Yeah, no, it was. I'm just looking at Fiona because she's.
And that's in Paris, right? With the OECD.
Yeah, we're flying to Paris and we're going to their headquarters. It's a Baroque palace, to be quite honest with you. So they're going to do that via Zoom, but it's just really useful to get their take. Other things that obviously we can be asking is whether they would have a natural sort of expectation that they would be the body that would review Fiscal Council. Fiscal Council, I put in a question to them on that, and they said yes, that would be their first port of call, because the OECD has that function and reputation for reviewing IFIs. So just to go over that and all the other things that they've flagged.
It may be worth just in advance, given the department has come back and made the point about Section 44, and just say, just what's your view? Does this? They may not have been aware of Section 44 of the NI Act. Just forward it and see if they're okay, members.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Grand.
So that's really it. Just to flag up those for the first week back.
Excellent. Members are content. We'll publish it on the
Also,
website.
Chair, we've also confirmed. Claudia's looking at me with one of those looks. Fiscal to the 19th of November.
Great.
So
okay.
Sir Robert will do Zoom as well.
And that's on the bill. Is that on the bill, just to the bill, or is
that's
it
Fiscal Council bill? But he can update.
Great. Okay, so we'd be good to get to stay on the advance. We'd like to do stuff on multi-year budget and everything. Okay, members, we'll publish that for everyone's happy on the website. 13 is any other business. I have no other business. If members are content, okay, well, in that case, members, yes. Yeah, that's fine, yeah. If members are agreed, the main pack will be issued for the meeting on the 5th of November, is issued on the Monday, 3rd of November, to enable some of our brilliant team to take a little bit of leave over recess. I presume you're not, everyone's sad enough to want to be reading your pack on Halloween. So we're agreed to that, and we hope people do get a few days, particularly our team. MLAs aren't allowed time off. Agenda item 14, date, time, place, and next meeting. Next meeting is here, Wednesday, 5th of November, on 2 p.m. in Senate Chamber. I'll put the question. The committee is now adjourned. Thanks all. Thank you.